You're tuned into SEC Sunday Night, part of the Chief Sports Network.
All right, grab a drink and grab a snack. It's SEC Sunday Night, where it still means more, live every Sunday at 8 o'clock on the Chief Sports Network. I am Rob Williams. He is Craig McMichael. Craig, what's going on, my brother? How's it going tonight?
Cheers, my buddy. I am doing well. The voice has recovered. If you heard me 24 hours ago, you couldn't even understand a word I was saying. It is awesome to be with you. It is awesome to be on the Chief Sports Network.
I want to remind everybody to go and download the Chief Sports Network app. It is available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Make sure that you get that. If you're not already watching us directly on the app, then you're going to want to go there. You can find us under Chief America after you download that, but you're going to get so much more content. You're going to get so much more ease when you're sliding in to watch the show, whether you're watching us live, whether you're listening to us back or watching the YouTube feedback. In my experience as a Chief Sports app user, it's been so smooth, and it allows me to just throw on the stream when it's live, or a lot of times I'm the type of guy who is listening to the daytime shows back in the evenings as I'm preparing dinner, as I'm cleaning around the house, maybe running some errands. I've got the guys in my ears. And so we're excited to be here with the Chief Sports Network, and we're excited to get started tonight. Again, my name is Rob Williams, and I obviously, we're not going to hide anything here. I'm a Gamecock through and through, and I've been able to cover the Gamecock football team a little bit in the course of my career. Craig, on the other hand, is not wearing the garnet and black. He covers the Georgia Bulldogs for Last Word on College Football, and so we're excited to kind of round out our vision. But we're not gonna sugarcoat it in any way, shape, or form. We can step back and look at the whole league, and you'll find out that we have our alliances outside of garnet and black and red as well.
Yep. I also cover the SEC for Last Word, so I do take a little bit of a broader approach. The Last Word in college football, usually up a couple articles a week, usually on the Georgia Bulldogs and also on the SEC. This week I'll also be doing a couple of features on the Big 12 as well, looking at our little brothers to the west of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I like what you're doing with the voice tonight. We're just kind of coming in like a little slow jams. It's a little R&B host going on. I don't know what you're drinking.
Don't talk, baby.
Straight lemon juice or what you spiked that up with, but it's good.
It is lemon water and Ricola tonight.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. We're excited because one of the things that we want to do here is we want to create the atmosphere that you guys can just come in and hang out, that you're going to have the opportunity to interact with us. We can see some people there. Frederick and Heath are already there in the chat box, and so we'd encourage you guys to jump in there and hang out with us in the chat as well. As we see those come in, we'll try to respond to them over the course of the show as we're talking with each other and getting into some of these topics. And there's going to be nights where, as we get through the summer, the two of us, we don't struggle to find things to talk about. Let's just put it that way. But at the same time, we want to interact with you and see what you have to say, especially during this time when we don't have as many sports to talk about. Our atmosphere has always been that we want you to be like you're sitting around with your buddies and just talking ball. And so that's what we want to bring. We're going to bring to you a network of guests that we have worked with and new guests as well that are experts in the SEC and beyond that. What's up, Casey? I see you over there in the chat box. We're gonna go SEC heavy, but we, as Craig says, we want to look at the rest of the country. We believe that there is a Power 2. And maybe as we get into Destin later on tonight, a Power 1, perhaps, when we look at the conference setup. But that doesn't mean that the other conferences aren't relevant in the discussion when it comes to the college football playoff or when it comes to some of the non-con matchups and how we evaluate strength of schedule and all of these things. And we're definitely going to see some teams from other conferences make a splash. And so we're going to bring some people in from across the country to kind of give us a well-rounded look. We don't want just our SEC perspective all the time. We need other people to come in and tell us that the SEC is just as good as we think it is, right? A couple of things we want to do here.
They never disagree, ever.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. There's not ever an argument on this show whatsoever. Hey, let's get into some news that matters, okay? News that matters
Yep.
tonight is that the NCAA baseball and softball tournaments are well underway. I've got a couple of things here as we note and we look over some scores. These are happening as we are moving through the show tonight. But prior to the show tonight, number 7 seed Georgia eliminated in Athens by Oklahoma State. So we've got some SEC teams dropping, but the big story of the night, the shocker of the tournament, number 1 overall seed Vanderbilt eliminated by Wright State. They had a tough draw with Louisville yesterday. It's a 3-2 game, and Wright State knocks out the Commodores today. It is a loss for the SEC, but a win for everybody watching baseball because we don't have to hear the Vandy Whistler anymore. As we go on, though, we have several SEC teams that are still playing. We've got Kentucky matching up with West Virginia. Just a random note here, not at all coming from a biased perspective, but Kentucky did eliminate Clemson earlier in the day. West Virginia beat them yesterday. Kentucky beat them today.
Casey.
And so now in that Clemson regional, you got UK and West Virginia matching up. The score is tied 7-7, top of 5 there. Kentucky has to win twice. You have Mississippi State against Florida State there in Tallahassee. They're up 2-0 in the bottom of the 6th. The Bulldogs also have to win 2. Tennessee and Wake Forest. Tennessee just has to pull this off, and they'll be in the clear. That game is tied in the bottom of the 6th. If they lose, they will get another one against the Demon Deacons tonight. OU is in Chapel Hill. They have to win twice as well. Auburn and NC State are matching up, and then we're going to see Texas and UTSA. UT actually lost last night as well, so they have to win twice. And then after we get off the air tonight, LSU and Little Rock at 9 o'clock on ESPNU, Arkansas and Creighton with former Gamecocks head coach Mark Kingston at 9 o'clock on the SEC Network. So a lot of
Can I be honest about something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Lax, bro. Hit us with your baseball knowledge here.
I cannot wait to turn the page in 2024, 2025. I feel like it has just meant more, but it's also meant more disappointment. Football, we were disappointed we didn't get enough, seeds. Basketball, we got a bunch of folks in, but not the champion. And now baseball, we're squandering our home field advantage. So I cannot wait to turn the page on this season and look ahead to 2025.
Well, I'll make a quick correction because Florida did win the national championship in basketball. However, on the women's side, South Carolina came up short, got blasted by UConn. And so you can see that there's been a couple of shortcomings in terms of championships. It'll be really interesting to see what happens here in the rest of this baseball tournament, right? You got the number 1 overall seed already gone. Another top 8 national seed, Georgia at 7, eliminated at home there. And so it's going to be interesting to see which one of these teams can kind of rise out of it. If I have to put my money on it today, those teams that are playing after we're off the air tonight in LSU and Arkansas are teams that I really, really like. We also have softball going on, and that is getting down to the nitty-gritty as we get close to having our Final Four teams in Oklahoma City. Tennessee eliminated UCLA earlier tonight. They will face Texas tomorrow, so that's 2 of your teams there. So the battle for the UT title tomorrow in Oklahoma City. And then Oklahoma is currently playing Oregon. That game is tied 1-1 in the top of the 3rd. As we know, Oklahoma has won the last 4 national championships in softball, and so they are now the clear favorite in my eyes as we get into this end of the softball tournament. When you look at that level of dominance that they've seen in Norman, it's hard to really put your money on anybody else just yet. But they did lose to Texas yesterday, and so we'll see what happens. But if I'm not really betting against the Sooners when it comes to softball right now. It is a historic run. You can't really count. I don't know, Craig. What do you think? Do we count the OU's dominance in the SEC, even though it was done prior to them entering the league? I think.
Yeah, I'm right.
If
it helps the story, bring it on.
I think the Big 12 would have something else to say about that, but we definitely have benefited. I think. Let's talk about this for just a second before we move forward. And you look at both softball and baseball. Both of those teams are still playing. Texas and Oklahoma in the Diamond Sports.
Yep.
As we look over the course of the year, we've made the argument, of course, multiple times that Texas was far more equipped and ready to enter the league. And the sport
Yep.
that we talk about the
Eight
most is
SEC championships. Eight SEC
absolutely
championships. Did
the
not
sport
win
that
in football, but were they pulling for it?
most people want to talk about football, and that's what we want to talk about as well. And so it's a little more imbalanced there, right? Texas was much, much better than what we see from Oklahoma in 2024 on the gridiron. But as we look forward across all sports, it's been a great addition to the SEC as we look at conference expansion and things kind of moving around. And it just continues to add to the dominance of the league. You know, there's plenty of people around the country that are outside of the league that want to throw stones, and understandably so from their perspective, right? Because
Right.
if you're on the backside of that that dominance, then you got to scratch and claw your way up to the top. That's what competition is all about. And so poking holes in the ship to try to level the playing field is definitely something that you're going to see there. But when you look at it from an SEC perspective, and Greg Sankey adding these teams a couple of years ago, it's kind of settled in, and this isn't really much of a story anymore. But we're looking right now at two postseasons that have both of those teams in the baseball and softball tournaments trying to make a run. And in one case, you've got Texas already down to the Final Four there, and Oklahoma trying to knock off Oregon tonight in an elimination game and get there as well. So just excited to see how the expansion of the SEC continues to dominate this championship footprint that is
Well,
so storied in the league.
well, I think it goes to what Sankey has talked about. He talked about, both Oklahoma and Texas were contiguous, so they're already part of it. They also shared a culture. Unlike the Big Ten, which were just really reaching for teams to add, or the Big 12 that was just trying to maybe grab the scraps, Greg Sankey was very strategic. He's just not going to take anybody. You've got Texas with Chris Del Conte, who is probably my favorite athletic director. As anyone who's ever read or heard me talk, Del Conte has done a fantastic job with the Longhorns in going after all of the right coaches. Sorry, Texas A&M baseball, but making sure that Texas is going to be competitive and putting the money there. And will have to give a shout out to Joe Castiglione, who's done a great job at Oklahoma. I think he's got some challenges up ahead with football, but I think what Castiglione has really done with Oklahoma, he has a history of making sure that Oklahoma Sooner athletics are well supported and that they're ready to compete in the SEC. So I think these are two great additions. So as we look at expanding any more, we're going to have to make sure that they're checking those footprints. Are they contiguous? More importantly, do they have an athletic department that is actually serious about it and not just wanting it something greater?
I personally think that it's good where it's at. As far as expansion goes, across the board, I'm pretty much done with expansion talk when it comes to conferences and when it comes to playoff formats. And we're going to get into this in just a few minutes. But, we had some news this week from Charlie Baker and the NCAA that they're looking to expand the NCAA basketball tournament, and they're looking at some numbers in the 70s, a couple different numbers there. But obviously, I think that tournament is exactly where it needs to be. In fact, I would be totally okay if we dropped it back from 68 to 64 because it's set up for success, and that number is going to be divisible easily. And so we really like what we have there. And in football, I've made this argument a few times that 16 is the number, and we don't want to expand past that. And in the same way, I think the SEC is set where they're at. And I don't know that Greg Sankey really is looking to make any more moves at this point. And, you don't turn down something that's an unbelievable addition. And I don't think Notre Dame is on the table, but if that was to come into a conversation, I think that you entertain that for sure. And
Ohio
the
State.
thing that I think that really moves the needle is if some of these other conferences fold. And so we'll see what happens there. If something happens with the ACC in the future, looking 5 or so years down the road, if that gets jailbroken and it kind of disperses, a topic that has really died down in the wake of NIL discussions and college football playoff format discussions. One of the things we haven't talked about as much is what's going to happen with some of these quote unquote lesser conferences that are still in the Power Four that are struggling to find the footing that the SEC and the Big Ten have. Are they going to move? Are they going to dissolve? Are they going to go the way of the Pac-12? We'll see what happens, and then what happens with the Pac-12. So I think that's the only way that you're going to see a few more teams added is because they're just swimming and floating and looking for a place to land. Speaking of swimming, I spent my weekend at the beach this past weekend. Craig spent the weekend losing his voice with allergies. I spent my weekend trying to invest in the people around me. And so one of the things that that we did that I love is just to hang out with one another. But one of the things that we did that I didn't like is make almost a 5-hour drive to get out to the coast. And so my knee is hurting, my hip is hurting. I'm getting old, Craig. I'm not as old as you, but I'm getting there, right? Being in the car for that long just really gets me. And so that brings me to our point here that each week we're going to have a guest line. Tonight, we wanted you to get to know us a little bit and learn about the feel of the show and where we're going and what the culture of SEC Sunday Night on the Chief Sports Network really looks like. But in weeks coming up, we're going to have guests for you each week to discuss the main topics in the sport, what is happening in the greatest conference in collegiate athletics. And that guest line is brought to you by TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance in Lexington. I know the owner and lead physical therapist, Mitch, there, and what he's doing is really, really incredible. He believes that real health and peak performance start with personalized care. So you're getting this one-on-one experience, whether you're an athlete, you're bouncing back from an injury, you're looking for your personal best. Maybe you got some pain, some aches and pains from riding in the car too long, overexerting yourself playing volleyball with 20-somethings when you can't hang anymore, like I was looking into this weekend. No matter what it is, TriFit's got your back, literally. You're getting an expert coach, you're getting hands-on therapy, and you don't have any insurance red flag or red tape that's going to happen there either. And some people say, I want my insurance to be involved, but the good thing about TriFit is that you don't have to have referrals. You don't have to have approval. If you go in and you're working on a knee and you want to talk about your shoulder pain, we can just jump and work on all these things. And from a price standpoint, you're going to come out about the same in a lot of cases. They had a client drive over 100 miles to see them and said it was worth every mile. So go to TriFitPerformance.com and book an appointment. TriFit Physical and Therapy, where recovery meets results. This is SEC Sunday Night on the Chief Sports Network. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.
At TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, we believe true health and peak performance start with personalized care. Whether you're an athlete recovering from injury or just chasing your next personal best, we're here to guide your journey. With expert coaching, hands-on therapy, and transparent cash-based pricing, you get the care you need without the insurance red tape. One client drove 100 miles just to see us and said it was worth every mile. Contact us at TriFitPerformance.com or 803-353-5619. TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, where recovery meets results.
We got started in 1979. Because we're a manufacturer, we're able to control our costs. That's why we like to manufacture as much of the product as we can, because in our factory stores we can offer a competitive edge over other people around the country. When people come into one of our Palm Casuals, it's like they're buying their car at Detroit. They're going right to the factory and buying their car.
30-day money-back guarantee. That's a big deal with us. I mean, we give 30 days to do anything. I mean, return it, change it, get a different color, get your money back.
When you pull into a store and it says Palm Casual, you know you're at a factory store.
This is SEC Sunday Night, part of the Chief Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to SEC Sunday Night here on the Chief Sports Network. We are live every Sunday night at 8 o'clock, and we thank you for joining us this week. Make sure that you download the Chief Sports app so that you can listen, so that you can watch, so that you can see so many other options there and amenities. And we want you to be enjoying the other shows on the network as well. It's not all about Rob and Craig. There are much more important people than us, much more talented people than us, much more experienced people than us on the network, and we want you to hear from them as well. Craig, as we get into this week, the SEC meetings in Destin, the one thing that I've heard a lot here on the Chief Sports Network and in other places is that these spring meetings in Destin have become much more important than media days. As somebody who is going to be covering that, who's writing about it this week, and also going to be somebody writing and covering media days coming up, how do you see the two comparing as far as the information and the movement that we're seeing happening?
Well, I think when you take a look at Destin, I think as media members, we're starved for content. You know, the portal is closed for the most part. Spring ball is over. A lot of that movement is gone. We will have some recruiting, but Destin gives us an opportunity to spice it up. And I'm going to have to give a shout out to our man, Paul Feinbaum, who did an excellent job of interviewing not only Commissioner Sankey, but he talked to Lane, he talked to Kirby. And I swear, Paul knows how to do media. He knows how to, poke the coaches, knows how to poke the SEC fan bases. And what it does is it creates a conversation. And this is what separates the SEC network, I think, from the ACC network to Big Ten network. Is last week we had the Big Ten coaches talking and they were meeting. I didn't hear anything. It's not that because I was just ignoring. I had my ears. I live in Detroit. I'm in Big Ten country. Yet nowhere did I hear what Tony Petitti was saying. But Greg Sankey was having a voice. Ross Dellinger was down there. Pat Forty was down there. All of these guys were down there because when the SEC speaks, the national media listens. So what I think is really important and where Dustin really gets going, it's going to help control our conversation for the summer and then as we get to the season. SEC media days, that's a little more formal. They're all going to be stacked on each other. And it's going to be important, but it's going to kind of curtail us. It's going to take maybe some of those conversations from Dustin start to balance out, and then we're going to get ready for kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. And when we look at Greg Sankey, I think it's a great transition point to look at just the way that he spoke this week, because to your point, I think that more people are listening.
Yep.
But he comes in with some bass in his voice and speaks boldly about the ideas that are being discussed. But I think the tone that he's speaking with is really the number one thing that we have to look at. A few weeks ago, we kind of looked at a handful of issues on our last show, and we were looking at the NIL changes. We're looking at the college football playoff format. We're looking at non-conference scheduling and alliances per se in that way. But we're also, and we're kind of ranking things, right? Like what's the most important? We're also looking at the transfer portal. You just mentioned it. We're going to get to that in just a few minutes. But before we can get to anything, I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me from SEC Media Day, from the meetings in Destin, is just the way that Greg Sankey speaks. The boldness that he's talking with tells us about the college football landscape. What did you hear when you're listening to him talk about the groundwork that he's laying? Well,
I think he's setting us all up to know that we are going from 12 to 16 teams. I think that was the most important part. He was talking about it. He said, he's talking about the SEC and he's starting to differentiate the SEC. He's a little irritated. He didn't say much back in December when Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina all got left out for the likes of Indiana, because he want to kind of play it out. But he let his coaches do a lot of talking. Lane Kiffin did a lot of talking. And what Sankey was really talking about was that SEC difference, things that we've talked about, the toughness of the schedule. And he was interested in the committee's decision making. Is it the right thing? Are they doing the right thing? What he's doing as SEC commissioner, he is taking the opinions of his coaches. He's taking the opinions of the administrators that are not always the same, I don't think. And he's bringing them up. It's what Nick Saban was so great at. We talk about Nick Saban, the GOAT of the on the football field. But what Saban did is he drove a conversation. And what Greg Sankey did is he's driving a conversation now about what does a 16-team playoff look like? How do we evaluate the SEC? The SEC is only at 8 games. The Big Ten's at 9 games. What is it going to take for the SEC to go to 9 games? Who should the SEC be playing in out of conference? So what Greg Sankey is doing is he is starting the conversation. Now, outside of the SEC, some are calling him, is he a villain? Is he trying to ruin college football? No. At the end of the day, Greg Sankey has one job: to promote the Southeastern Conference. And what he is doing that efficiently. He is trying to balance his constituents, his big universities, his little universities, those that may want more, those that one may say, hey, we got to hang back a little bit. And he's trying to drive the conversation.
I think that what he says is important, but the way that he says it lets us know that not only does he have all the power, but he knows that he has all the power, because the way that the SEC goes is going to sway how everything else moves. It's not just about swinging it around and trying to sit on your throne, but it is what you said. It's making sure that the SEC is elevated. And because there's been so much success, it causes people outside of the league, like I said before, to throw stones and to hate. But I said this on a show here on the Chief Sports Network earlier this week. If you're not in the SEC, don't be upset with Greg Sankey. Be upset with your own conference commissioners for not leading well enough to keep you in the conversation. Why are we faulting Greg Sankey for doing his job well and elevating the conference? I don't understand why. I don't understand why we can throw rocks at that. It's this, but it happens every time, right? If you're great at something, then you collect haters, and so I think that it is. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. I think Ari Wasserman did a really good job this week. You know, he was playing devil's advocate. I know he was poking you a little bit, but it's easy. If you look at the last 2 years, the SEC has not had anyone in the national championship. They've not won a national championship. Now, if we look at the bigger picture, we take a bigger look. Now we start to see the SEC dominance. But let's be honest, we've talked about this on other shows. We talk about this offline. NIL and the transfer portal has changed the SEC. We do not have the same number of 5-stars going to Georgia, Alabama, and Texas that we did 3 years ago. NIL did a great thing where now we have people like Mizzou now getting 5-stars. That talent is starting to kind of spread out and go through. Second, the transfer portal has made people not wait. Kirby Smart talked about this churn throughout the year. He's talking about how the transfer portal has taken away his depth. Now, you may be crying in South Carolina saying, oh, boo-hoo, Kirby Smart is crying about depth for once. But it's being honest. Georgia, Alabama, Texas does not have the depth. They do not have 4-stars, 5-stars stacked upon each other like they did in the past.
Nobody does.
No one does. But what that has done is it has changed the college football landscape. Yes, in 2 years, the SEC has not made the national championship. They haven't won a national championship. But they've been pretty impressive. And yes, it's frustrating. And it's easy for our Big Ten friends and our ACC friends to dance on the graves of the SEC. But let's take a look. Let's look at 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, to really kind of see what that looks like. And then we can start to say maybe Greg Sankey might be blowing a little too much smoke. But for right now, he's doing what he should do as commissioner, promote the Southeastern Conference.
Yeah, I want to say what's up to Matt Sellers and Lance Player over there in the chat box. How you guys doing? Thanks for joining us tonight here on SEC Sunday Night Live, every Sunday night at 8 o'clock on the Chief Sports Network. As we shift to look at your article for this week, Craig, we're going to look at the college football playoff model and where do we stand. I think we're going to come in here on a bit of a different page, but you have Lane Kiffin talking about a straight 16 seeded tournament, essentially. Then we have the two other models that we've come really familiar with, right? You have the 5 and 11, and then you have the 4-4-2-2-1 with the 3 at large there on the back end. So I know that we disagree, but the viewers and the listeners who may be new to us this week don't know all of our thoughts there, right? So from my perspective, as it stands right now, I would advocate for the 4-4-2-2-1 model simply because
you forgot one. You forgot the 3.
Yeah, that's fine. There's a 3 on there.
No, it's not fine. This is the problem with that model.
There's 3 at large, whatever.
Why run the calculator?
I do not trust any committee. They have proven themselves time and time again. And this is where I had a problem with what Ari Wasserman had to say this week, because he said that he didn't see any mistakes, that outside of one year where you can make an argument for FSU, that he hasn't seen they've done a bad job. I can find a mistake every single time. They absolutely do not know what they're talking about half of the things.
Did they get the Final Four wrong? Did they?
What do you mean?
Was Alabama, Ole Miss, or South Carolina going to make the Final Four this year? Did they get the Final Four wrong? Sure, they may have got the 12 wrong.
We have to, yeah, sure. But where's the integrity of the process if all we're going to talk about is did they get the Final Four wrong? We already know that there's only a handful. We don't have 12 teams that can win the national championship. We definitely don't have 16 teams that can win the national championship, but you do have 12 or 16 that might can make a play, might can make a run, might can win a game or two. What if South Carolina or Alabama or Ole Miss gets in and springs an upset early? It shifts the matchups. It shifts how everything lands for the rest of it. And here's the deal. no, they probably didn't get the top 4 wrong. But isn't the product supposed to be for the fans? Are we not trying to produce the best product on the field? And that's what the networks want. That's what everybody who's really controlling wants, because that's going to get the most eyeballs and that's going to produce the most money. And so if you want more competitive games, we got to seed it correctly. But 2, we got to put the teams in that are the best football teams. The problem with the committee is that they don't watch football. They simply do not have time, nor do they have the football, or they don't have football knowledge. Yeah. Okay, let's speak from your perspective, right? As an athletic director, not on the collegiate level, but as someone who is living in that world, do you have time to watch everybody else's games from other schools?
No.
Absolutely not. There's no way. Either they're not doing their jobs or they're not watching the games. And we just tend to err on the side. Yeah, well, absolutely. We tend to err on the side of they're not watching the games. And so we're just going off straight numbers.
So we're just going to give away automatic qualifiers. So what you're going to do is you're going to lessen what the SEC season looks like, because automatically you get the top 4, and then we're going to have an SEC championship that 2 weeks ago on our old show we were talking about making the playoff and making the Final Four and making the national championship, and you didn't even bring up the SEC championship. So I'm sorry, Rob. I still like Atlanta. I still like the SEC championship. It still means something to me.
I think they're going to put playing games though. If it goes to the 4-4-2-2-1-3, let me say all the numbers for you.
Yeah, I don't want these AQs. Just give me the best teams.
So you want the 5-11?
Yeah, I'm not going to go with. I called it the Joey Freshwater 16, just to let you know. And then for those fans young enough, which Rob, you may be too young, Joey Freshwater used to be Lane's pseudonym when he was in Knoxville, but Lane wants just the top 16 teams in there. That's not going to work, because more than likely you're going to leave out probably an ACC team and or a Big 12 team, a Group of 5 team, and of course Notre Dame. Now you may be saying, who cares if we leave them out? Well, listen, we have to at least try to promote the idea of equity, and you're also trying to prevent a lawsuit. So I do like the 5+11 model, because in a 5+11 model, conference championships still matter. While they matter in Atlanta, they may not matter as much in Indianapolis or in Charlotte or in Dallas. It still means something in the SEC to win that championship. We are going to 16 teams, so give me 11 at-large spots. And I'm sorry, this is another reason I did not feel bad for Alabama. Go beat Vandy. Go beat Oklahoma, who is terrible. I do not feel bad for Ole Miss. Go and beat Kentucky. Go and beat Florida. And I'm sorry.
All right, easy what you say here. Easy what you say here.
Listen, and I know who's paying my bills, but I didn't feel bad for South Carolina. Yes, they were probably the hottest team in November going into December. But you needed to win one of those 3 games. You probably could have beaten LSU. You had Alabama on the ropes. Knock one of those 2 out, and then you're good. I'm not going to give you the Ole Miss game. And at the end of the day, I'm sorry, we're talking about teams 13, 14, 15, and 12. You already admitted they're not going to win the national championship. I'm not going to feel bad that they're left out. And again, you go to the 5+11 model, you're talking about 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. What was interesting about this year's college football playoff, the last 2 to 3 weeks of the college football season, we had more eyes, more people interested, because we had about 20 some odd teams that were interested in getting that spot. You go to 16, you go to the at-large spots, all of a sudden now we've got 25, 30, 35 teams more interested, more engaged. Here's where I'm speaking like an athletic director. A more engaged fan base means more TV viewers, means better seats, means better college football. You give me the AQs, just throw those in the garbage. Earn your spot in the playoff by a championship or having a good enough season to get in the top 16.
Yeah, I see this comment over here from Exo about saying, "Don't tell us to beat LSU. Tell the refs," and that's definitely another argument for another day, which we totally get.
Hang on, I'm going to respond. Here's what I tell my team as a coach: don't let a game come down to the refs. Win it on the field.
What do you say when we look at the 5+11? You know, the SEC coaches and even Greg Sankey are talking a lot. I felt like going into the meetings in Destin that they were going to lean towards the 4-4-2-2-1-3.
And so here's the divide.
But
5+11 is coaches, and then whatever the math is, and I'll get my calculator out to figure out what that math is. That's going for administrators.
I think when you listen to Greg Sankey, he says things like we could actually get more teams in with the 5+11. I think
Yes.
that's absolutely true, and I would be on your side here, and I would advocate for the
Please.
5+11 if
Yes.
if we could change the criteria for the committee. If we can have some tougher written criteria. We've been saying it for months. If just steal from the net in college basketball. Give me something. Here's what I would do. This is the most unpopular statement that I make on this topic ever, but give me the BCS system to help them. Don't give it completely.
It's a data point. It's a data point. See,
Don't
but
give.
that
I'm saying increase the value. I'm not saying
Yeah.
give it completely to the BCS system, but I think it needs to have more value because it is a more complex number. And if they want data points and they want numbers because they're not watching actual football, then we need to weight the numbers correctly.
well, we have the data points, and this is where some folks are going to find out. I'm a big lacrosse guy. I'm a big college lacrosse guy, right for inside the cross. One of the college lacrosse, the committee uses what's called the RPI. It's an RPI index that goes based on your wins, your opponent's record, and then like the people you beat. There's like 3 different categories. Throw those data points in there. Find those key data points, whether it's the BCS, whether it's those advanced analytics. There's some great sites out there that do some awesome things with advanced analytics. I love the idea of efficiency. Bring those in, put those down, make those part of those data points, and I'm right there with you. Have the data there. But here's the most important part. Who's on the committee? Andy Staples, Ari Washington, our boss, Tony Saragusa, guys who are watching 18, 20, 25 games. National writers, you can have some beat writers in there, guys that are engaged, let them do it. Change the committee makeup.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. When we look at the issues across the board that are discussed, the college football playoff, the non-conference scheduling, the inside the conference scheduling, is it 8 or is it 9? There was comments made about leaving.
It's 9.
Hold on, we're getting there. There's comments made about leaving the NCAA. Which one do you feel like is the most important? I don't know what you would say, but just quickly, I think for me, it's that it's the schedules.
Yep.
Because I think that has such an impact on what's going to happen in the college football playoff. But just really quickly, out of those, is there one that sticks out to you that's most important? I'm going somewhere with this. I'm going to tee your guy Kirby up here in just a second.
To me, it's 100%. It's the schedule. What do those conference games look like? What does that non-conference game look like? Because I'm sorry, I'm going to take the words from Nuke from Bull Durham. I want to announce my presence with authority. Have the best schedules. Forget about Old Dominion. Forget about Charlotte. Forget about Austin P. Give me another SEC game. Give me another Big Ten game, and then I'll be happy.
Yeah, I see our guy Lance over there in the chat box. Lance, I just want to let you know, he says that he believes South Carolina gets in with a different kind of 9-3 this year. A few weeks ago on our old show, Craig and I actually went through every single SEC team, all of their games, not just conference games, but the entire schedule. And so we have a spreadsheet where we predicted every game in May that we will refer back to. I had South Carolina at 10-2. You can call out a homer pick all you want. I think that it's well within reason. Craig had them at 9-3 as somebody who's looking completely outside of it with no bias at that at all. So we're kind of right there with you when we look at that. As far as the schedule goes, Craig, to kind of get us back on track here. When you look at the Big Ten and the SEC, what does it do? Because I do think we're going to non-conference games, and I've been on the other side of that I think until we fix the playoff, that we need to stay at 8. I'm in favor of 9.
You're going to fix the playoff at 16, Rob. You got to compromise.
Come on,
we're both married. We know. Sometimes we got to compromise.
I think that long term, I'm totally about 9. But until we fix the playoff selection situation, that I prefer to stay at 8. But let's go ahead and make the argument for 9 here. What does it look like if we're going 9+1 in terms of 9 SEC conference games? Then you're going to add a Big Ten game. And then let's not forget, for teams like Kentucky, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina. You're going to have another, theoretically, you're going to have another Power 4 team there, as all those teams have ACC opponents that they're playing at the end of the year.
4 words for you. It just means more. It's good. It's a good thing. It's good for Georgia and Georgia Tech to play. It's good for South Carolina and Clemson to play. It's good for Kentucky and Louisville to play. It's important to have these matchups. Yes, it makes it more for a difficult road. But one of the things we see a couple of guys talking about the basketball seedings in there. You talk about the quad wins. They have the 4 quadrants of wins, and I think that is probably the most important one, the data point that I would bring in. If you have 9, 10, or 11 big time wins or big time games, those are going to be quadrant wins. Those are going to be quality wins. Maybe you're going to take a quality loss, but then you can take a 9-3 South Carolina and say, you know what, those 3 are pretty good, because what we're going to see is those 3 losses were against maybe a top 5 team. Maybe you had 2 top 10 losses in there. So you can look at the quality of that in there. But to me, you have to keep those rivalries. Those rivalries cannot go away.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that point there at the end, that I think if this is going to force some of those rivalries to go away, we need to have different conversations, because those are things that need to be mainstays. Okay. We think the schedule.
Let's just say one more thing about these rivalries. They have to be at the home stadiums.
Absolutely.
I'm looking at you, Georgia Tech. I don't want to play across from the varsity. I don't want to play at Mercedes-Benz. We'll do that for the SEC championship.
Money talks. Quick update: UTSA is up 2-0 on Texas early, and I forgot to mention earlier that Ole Miss also in a game against Murray State, they're down 1-0 in the top of the second. As we look back at Destin, we said the schedule is most important. Kirby Smart said something completely different, and I quote: "The biggest decision that has to be made across football right now is the transfer portal. Needless to say, I'm a proponent for January whenever it fits window. There's people saying we can't get our kids in academically. Well, they're getting mid-year high school players in the same academic window. It's happening everywhere." So do you think do you agree with Kirby, is the answer to fixing the transfer portal to just put one in January in between the 2 semesters and call it a day?
No. Stop it, Kirby. We're not getting rid of the two transfer portals. It's chaotic. What we need to move is maybe a high school signing period, but here's the deal: they don't want to move the high school signing period too, because they want those kids in there early enrolled by January. The problem is we have too much stuff going on in December and January. We have bowl games, we have playoff games, we have the portal, we have recruiting, we have all these different things going on. And the reason why coaches are talking about going from 2 to 1 portal is they're trying to limit their chaos. But we've talked about it a number of times. The winter transfer portal is for adding and trying to get there. Now, you wrote a really good piece back in January. You said, "No, the portal kind of stunk this year," and I agree with you. The spring portal has not been great outside of some guy from Knoxville that decided to go to Westwood. But even then, we're going to debate the word greatness. But the spring portal is for right sizing the roster, and especially if we go look and see if this house settlement ever goes through, SEC rosters are going to be reduced. We may see something where we have an 85 to 100 roster limit. In order to get that done, you need to have that second portal window in this after the spring games, because you have to see where you're at and what's going on. You are not adding for depth in the spring. You are right sizing your roster to make sure it's ready for the fall.
Yeah, I actually think that I agree with Kirby. I do think that you make a great point that it's going to make it difficult to get the roster right. The numbers.
That's why people come Sunday night to hear my great points.
The numbers are going to be difficult. That's true. People do come to hear your great points. They definitely don't come to hear me talk. I talk enough as it is in all aspects of my life. I don't think anybody really shows up to hear me talk, but just humor me for a moment. I think that Kirby is onto something in terms of limiting the chaos. At some point, people are going to crack. We already see it happening. When you have somebody like Chip Kelly leaving a head coaching position to take an offensive coordinator position, now we're seeing it. It's happening over and over again. Now you got Malzahn stepping away from a Power 4 job to go be an offensive coordinator at Florida State. This is going to continue to be a trend because of the amount of stuff that continues to be put on these head coaches. People have limits. There's only so much that they can output. And it doesn't matter what level of expectations, how much we hype them up, how much money that we give them. Their limit is their limit. And so I think that they are just trying to keep themselves in the game for longer. We saw kind of what the ending looked like for Nick Saban, where we can kind of debate what was going on in his head and the timeline and how things unfolded and how tight of a window it was and how late of a decision it was and all those things. But ultimately, I think that he just decided that he has things to say about the game. He has ways to get back to the game, but continuing to coach in this environment is difficult. And so I get it. We can't. Nobody is saying, "Oh, poor you," with the 8-figure salaries that they're boasting. But what's the quality of life outside of those few moments when you're winning championships? Or what's the quality of life outside of those few moments where you win games when you have a 3-win, 4-win season? And so I think limiting the chaos a little bit is a positive thing. I agree with you, though, that there are hurdles from a logistics standpoint to make that happen.
But again, how does a January portal only help that? I think it adds more chaos. You're still in the playoff. You're still dealing with high school recruiting. I don't understand how a January portal looks at it. And then here's the other part. At some point, these kids are going to say you're limiting their mobility, you're limiting their movement. They're going to sue the NCAA, and we're still going to have a spring portal. So it's a non-factor. So they can complain about it, they can be upset about it, but it's not going away. It's very hard to take things away. Going back to your NCAA comment about basketball, going from 68 to 64. It's really hard to say, oh, we're going to go back to 64.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going to have to make a really compelling reason to do that. And the NCAA is really good at maybe putting on championships, but they're really bad at making compelling reasons that hold up in a court of law.
Yeah, no doubt. So I told you guys earlier that I was at the beach this weekend, and one of the things that I did was sit out on the deck on some hard plastic furniture, and my back was screaming for the entire time that I was out there. I spent a few hours out there, and my lower back is just killing me. I wanted to leave them a note because we were between Wilmington and Myrtle Beach, and let the guys know that they own this house, that if they just go to Palm Casual, they could get much more quality furniture, and they could find a store in either direction, because we know that when you go to Palm Casual, that they're making the furniture there, that it's high quality, that it's going to be comfortable, and it's going to be durable, and it's going to last, and it's going to give you the best product there on your outdoor patio furniture. So go check it out, palmcasual.com. Remember, this is the SEC Sunday Night on Chief Sports Network. We're going to take another break, and we'll come back with my favorite segment of the week as we close it down. We'll be right back.
At TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, we believe true health and peak performance start with personalized care. Whether you're an athlete recovering from injury or just chasing your next personal best, we're here to guide your journey. With expert coaching, hands-on therapy, and transparent cash-based pricing, you get the care you need without the insurance red tape. One client drove 100 miles just to see us and said it was worth every mile. Contact us at trifitperformance.com or 803-353-5619. TriFit Physical Therapy and Performance, where recovery meets results.
We got started in 1979. Because we're a manufacturer, we're able to control our costs. That's why we like to manufacture as much of the product as we can, because in our factory stores we can offer a competitive edge over other people around the country. When people come into one of our Palm Casuals, it's like they're buying their car at Detroit. They're going right to the factory and buying their car.
30-day money-back guarantee. That's a big deal with us. I mean, we give 30 days to do anything. I mean, return it, change it, get a different color, get your money back.
When you pull into a store and it says Palm Casual, you know you're at a factory store.
This is SEC Sunday Night on the Chief Sports Network.
welcome back to SEC Sunday Night here on the Chief Sports Network. Remember, download that Chief Sports app and make sure that you are interacting with every show on the network and continuing to maximize your sports experience. As we look to close the hour, I want to say thank you again to everybody in the chat box. Thank you guys for being here. Continue to let people know we're going to be here every single Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And every week when we close it down, we're going to have a segment called The Last Word. And this is going to be really fun tonight, Craig, because we've talked a lot of theory and we've talked a lot of business and those things. But now we get to talk a little bit about football. I understand we have some weeks ahead of us. We got to get through the summer. We got to take our beach trips. We got to get school kicked back off in the fall. But then we're going to get there. And we have kick times for the first 3 weeks from the SEC. And as we're looking at this here in The Last Word, shout out to Drew over there in the chat box. As we're looking at The Last Word, what games are you most excited about in the first 3 weeks of the season? I'll give you the layup here. Texas and Ohio State play in week 1. LSU and Clemson play in week 1. One of the most intriguing games for me in week 1 is that noon game on ABC and Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. That's Syracuse and Tennessee. We both picked this as an upset for the Orange to come in and beat the Vols. It'll be interesting to see as we close in on that date exactly what that line is going to look like. But I think this is a moment for Josh Heupel and his crew to really set the tone for their season, because there's been so much happening in the offseason. This would be a massive win for them. Clearly, neither one of us believes it's going to happen.
Yep.
But we'll see, right? We'll see what happens there. I think that Syracuse comes in, Fran Brown coming back down to the state of Georgia and getting it done. What do you think in week 1? What sticks out to you as the most important game? Is it Marshall at Georgia? That's a hard-hitting matchup.
As much as I want to give a shout out to my Georgia State Panthers, who will be visiting the Vaught and playing Ole Miss, the game that I'm going to be looking for is, what is Brother Hugh going to do in Waco, Texas? Is he going to be spending his time at Magnolia Farms and making sure that his designs are going to be great for when he gets fired from Auburn? Or is he going to have Auburn engaged and he's going to take it to Baylor? Auburn versus Baylor is going to be interesting because I'm going to be honest, you fans, you have no clue what you're getting from either team. I also want to see, is Jackson Arnold the real deal, or is he still a little bit of a work in progress like he was at Oklahoma?
What's up, JB? Good to see you over there. Yeah, when you look at Jackson Arnold, we both have Auburn. Let's let everybody know, okay? So if you're new to Rob and Craig, okay,
yep,
and you haven't heard about the spreadsheet and you haven't heard our predictions, we are here to bring them to you on SEC Sunday Night. Get used to the spreadsheet talk. We're going to discuss it because we're going to stand on it. We made some bold predictions and we made some not so bold predictions, right? But we both have Auburn at 9-3. And so that means that we expect them to go into Waco, and even though it might get weird and it might get wild, they got to come out of there with a win. So it'll be interesting to see.
Do you still like their show?
Well, no, I don't. I wasn't really the biggest fan in the first place. That's not really my vibe of a show. But it was
I'm
wild.
The cultured one here. I'm the cultured one here. I get it. It's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. You're right. Okay, week 2, your layup is Michigan and Oklahoma. But I'm going with Vanderbilt and Virginia Tech. Week 2 on the ACC network, you get a night kick at 7:30, and here's why.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be a lot more attention on Diego Pavia and the Commodores this year. And for that reason, we both believe that they will have a less successful year. I believe I had them at 5-7 in 2025 coming up, because I think that people have just figured it out. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to take them lightly. The offense is still going to be difficult to stop with some matchups, and I think that Pavia is an absolute scrappy baller, and he's going to will them to some big plays or to get them into some games. But I just think that teams are going to come in prepared. You're not going to catch anybody with their pants down anymore with Vanderbilt and Diego Pavia. And so I'm interested to see against a Virginia Tech team who they beat last year. Here's your first opportunity at a Power 4 matchup for them, where they're going to be facing off with somebody that they played with their team last year. Well, let's see if they can bring the same level of play. What about you for week 2? You taking the layup?
I've got UL Monroe at Alabama because we all know what happened in 2006 when UL Monroe went to Alabama. They beat Saban. So look out, Kalen DeBoer. You are on the clock, my friend.
That's interesting. Also, a night kick, 7:45 on the SEC network.
Yeah. I almost said it with a straight face, too.
There's no shot that's happening. Just so we know.
No.
No shot that's happening.
Bookmark it. Let's be honest. Kalen likes to play with his food, so we'll see what happens.
Bookmark it today. That's absolutely not happening. Week 3, though, is where it heats up. Okay, there's tons of games here. Okay, you get noon, Wisconsin and Alabama. You got Georgia and Tennessee at 3:30 on ABC. You've got Florida LSU at 7:30 on ABC, and you've got
outside of that noon.
You got A&M and Notre Dame on NBC at 7:30. The noon is Wisconsin and Alabama.
That's good. That'll beat the big noon kickoff.
Yeah, it will. Absolutely. And for me, Georgia Tennessee is an interesting one, but I already picked the Tennessee game, so I'm going with Florida at LSU on ABC at 7:30. Death Valley at night. The Gators are coming in. It's going to be early in the year. You're still going to have a lot of hype surrounding DJ Lagway and what the Gators can do. You're going to build this game as Nussmeier versus Lagway. Obviously, what LSU does in week 1 against Clemson is going to bear some weight on this, but we know LSU's 0-5 in the past 5 openers against big opponents. And they've played well after losing some of those openers. And so even if they lose to Clemson, I don't necessarily know that this one isn't getting really, really hyped up. It's already got the night kickoff on ABC, so we know it's going to be their primetime matchup. I'm really interested in that. We know that
Billy do on the road? How does Billy Napier usually do on the road?
You tell us, Craig. How does he do on the road?
Not great, Bob. Not great.
Yeah,
I'm sure the Gators. Yeah.
Not it. I don't see it, and I'm really riding the LSU bandwagon this year in terms of teams that I think are going to be really, really good. I have LSU and Ole Miss in Atlanta in the SEC championship game, and so if that's going to happen, they're going to have to beat the Gators in week 3. What about you? Anything else sticking out to you?
Well, I'm heading to City Grocery, and we're going to call Alex McDaniel, and we're going to call our good buddy IA, and we're going down to the vault at Ole Miss for Arkansas Ole Miss. Because that game is always weird. That game is always wild. So I am going 7:45. It's going to be lots of fun. 6:45 Central for our friends over there. I'm going for Arkansas Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I think, Taylor Green is a turnover machine, and we're going to have some questions about the Ole Miss defense heading into 2025, having just replaced some guys. And so I'll be interested to see what they can do from a defensive standpoint. What is the matchup with Arkansas's offense versus Ole Miss's defense? I think that we both believe in Austin Simmons. And so I think that Lane is still going to be dialing it up from an offensive perspective. But I'd really love to see, what if Taylor Green gets going? That game gets weird. You're absolutely right about that.
I was right. Another segment we like to use on our show.
Listen, everybody. I was right is not a segment. I was wrong is one of our favorite segments here. We'll bring it back when we get into the college football season and we look at some of the statements that we've made. We look back at the spreadsheet. We look at our weekly predictions, and we'll tell you our biggest mistakes and our biggest shortcomings and our biggest boneheaded comments. But no, I was right, Craig. None of that I was right stuff. I bet. Let's go ahead and say that game's a blowout, and Ole Miss wins by 3 or more touchdowns.
Hey, it's a party in the
You're going to put that on I was wrong.
It's a party in the SIP either way.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you again for joining us. A big shout out to our producer, the Mad Dog, Phil Mullinax. If you can't see him tonight, but as always, he is here with us. And so many of you who are in the chat box, I know who Phil is. And so we want to say thank you to him for being with us tonight. Thank you to my friend and my brother, my co-host, Craig McMichael, for being here and bringing the heat, letting you know our thoughts here as we get into SEC Sunday night every single week here on the Chief Sports Network. Go get the Chief Sports Network app. We will see you next week. Good night, everybody.